I have an idea. Let us paint a skeletal robot wizard. Welcome back again, Chromatic Warriors. This time around, what offerings we have? Imotekh, the Stormlord. I like the idea of a skeletal robot wizard, so that's what I went with when Games Workshop sent me some advanced copies for my review and painting. But what this gift gave beyond plastic was the opportunity to paint more Necrons, and this time focus on a single character. In the past, I made a video creating a recipe to paint up my combat patrol, so now I can ask myself the question, how would I do that better? How would I slow down and take a little more time on the centerpiece models? So let us do just that. First things first, we're going to kick it off with house favorite Magnolia Brown from the Army Painter. It's giving me a nice brown undercoat, but there isn't much to say that hasn't been said by the airbrush already. I'm just laying down a base coat and taking advantage of the proper tool. This is where it becomes more interesting, with a full bowl of Regiment gray loaded up in my airbrush, utilizing the dimensions of the model to my advantage by maintaining the proper angle with the airbrush, working from that zenithal perspective. Just keep in mind here that I have more colors. I have lighter that I'd like to go, and I want those lighter tones to be contained inside of this gray area. So I'll go somewhat broad with this gray. Following that coating of Regiment gray, I've loaded up some skeleton bone, and I want to be a little bit more precise with this pass. I'm going to try to target the upper half of some of these larger areas if possible, such as the ribs. I want a little circle of light on the upper thigh. Try to catch the top of the foot and the knee very slightly. Yeah, I'm trying to target some key areas now to kind of lift the dimensions of the figure apart. Kind of pull out some of the larger points of light. Yeah, we'll say it like that. Seeing is believing. Just make sure you work very gradually, so the same rules apply for creating a smooth blend with your brush. Many thin layers. You don't want to overload an area. Sometimes those building layers of saturation is how gradients are created, so the same applies to the airbrush. Before I put the airbrush off to the side for a while, I pulled out some Regiment gray, and over a base coat of matte black, I'm going to highlight things slightly. It's worth noting because I used some poster putty to mask off the shoulder pads. I want to keep two things in mind. One, the downward facing zenithal light, and also the dimensional light, we'll call it, as the cloak moves outwards and away from the model, away from where the curling areas, it's going to gather more light. So just want a gentle highlight where the cloak is bending outwards. And yeah, we'll have another one of those areas right around here. Before I pull my airbrush back out, I'm going to go in and break things up by taking a mixture of black and deep gray, just to make it a little more deeper. And you can see I'm picking out the areas, the armpit joints, the elbow joints, all the kind of posable hinge-like areas. Just be getting a touch of the gray. There we go. So I've loaded up some matte white into the airbrush, and I'll be leaning into the transparent quality of this. I don't want to max out on white. I'd like it to be, a little toned down. And you can see I've also base coated some of these gray areas, and yeah, a thin coat of white over that will highlight it well enough for a wash to be applied. Just try to apply very small portions. It will dry and desaturate a little bit, but less is more, with a very limited white highlight and producing some dramatic shadows. Yeah. For the base, I'm just going to dry brush some skeleton bone in place. I'll be able to peck away at the other details, but just want to make sure I give everything that's going to be between his legs a little touch. Now I've taken some gunmetal and true copper, and you can see I'm picking out various metal pieces. In the case of the true copper, I've mixed a little bit of black into it to deepen, but the gunmetal, that's the pure stuff. So I'm just going to go pick out some of these smaller framework details, and we will jump back. Stepping right along, it's time for some washes. First of all, I'll be using dark tone. And at first I thought I would have to use a brown wash on the brass areas, but they ended up being so minuscule I think I can get away with it with just a coat of black. But you can see I'm just covering all the metallic areas, all of those deep gray areas that receive just a kind of an overspray of that white, laying down a nice heavy amount of the wash. It's undiluted. I'm making sure that I'm not just dumping it out and leaving a puddle in the middle of an area. I'm spreading it out, but it's straight from the bottle. I'll just take the tour and get all of this wrapped up. Now, as I'm continuing to slice out the details, you can see I've already laid down a base coat of molten lava. I'm going to be wet blending this orange shoulder pad. So first, just a nice thick amount of molten lava. I'm going to add black to it, but I'll need just a very small amount because I think it will take over pretty quickly because the molten lava is such a bright color. So first I'll take just a very small amount of black. And as I mix that together right on the surface of the model, it'll give me a brown tone. And we'll just keep on pushing. It's about far enough. I'll go back and grab more molten lava now. Just mix it right in, calming things down. It's a quick take, but yeah, that's a good start. And now for some cleanup after that wet blend has had a good amount of time to dry. It's a pretty thick amount of paint. I'm just going to be mixing and matching, just filling in the areas around the shoulder pad, these downward facing angles, these kind of sides of the panels. Just gently blending in there. I can mix varying amounts of black in with the orange to match the appropriate brown tone. I'd also like to take that deep mixture and just very finely draw a dark line inside of these grooves. Any bits of some kind of very subtle battle damage sculpted onto the bottle, I'll give that a touch as well. And opposite of all of that enhancement of the shadow areas, I'm also going to be taking my original molten lava color and just taking very small, controllable amounts of paint and feathering it in place. I apologize for my voice. It's very stuffed up right now. It's the fall season. And with that same molten lava, I'll pull some edge highlights into place, just like so. Some of these edges are difficult to reach, so you are going to have to pencil it on, like I'm doing there. Just press very lightly. These other more accessible areas, you can hit them in the more traditional way. Just gently laying the edge of your brush over the side and riding along that edge, sort of like a violin bow. And once I'm satisfied with my blending, I'll sharpen things up with some edge highlighting. Just adding a little bit of white into that molten lava. And just remember, every edge highlight can be a gradient, so I won't completely cover that last line of molten lava. I suppose, where it's accessible, I might want to lay down just a very small blend. I still intend to go a little bit brighter, mixing a little bit more white in with this orange. But once I do that, it's just going to be a series of tiny dots and slashes. Really want the rest of the surface to breathe. It just needs a very small embellishment to really snap things together. Add that lovely dimension that we're after. Back to the airbrush. I have a mixture of Magnolia brown and black in here. It's 1 drop of Speedpaint medium, 3 drops of Magnolia brown, 1 part black. Now, controlling the angle, I'll just be laying down very light coats, all the downward facing surfaces, and nice anti-zenithal pass. Very conservative with this. Again, you don't want to overspray. Just let things sit and dry for a moment before you lay too much in place. You can also generally hit the shin and foot areas, creating a bit of a darker silhouette as the eye travels downward on the model. Just give it 1 more of these outward sprays. Just very little bit. The impulse is to overdo it because this is a fun step and a fun result to observe. But it goes very far on a model this size. A little goes a long way, as always. That should be just enough. With that laid in place, I decided to dilute down some speed paint. Apply a very thin coat all over the model. So what I did was take 10 parts of speed paint medium to 1 part speed paint, that color being dark wood. That was too heavy, so I added 3 more drops of the speed paint medium, so it's a 13:1 ratio. So there you go. You can see this kind of thin candy coating I'm getting, just a hint of a tint, but the properties of that speed paint give me an advantage. There are certain, these smaller kind of superficial scratches and dents sculpted onto the model. You can see how that is settling into those nicely. So it does have a good tendency to draw itself into the crevices. And I'll be sure to take my mixture, as thin as it may be, and every time I have a brush load, draw it out over a considerably large area. See, I'm getting a lot of mileage out of a single brush load. See, I want just a very, very subtle amount laid in place. All right, the fun part. I always enjoy adding the final and near final highlights to everything, kind of going for a victory lap. But at this point, I can see a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm going in with pure white. I have it thinned down just a little bit so I can blend with it as well. Just kind of consolidating some of those progressions. There's some areas that are just too tight to bring up with the airbrush alone, and I don't know, I need to lay some edge highlighting in, of course, and enjoy the touch of the hand. So I just want to very meticulously go over this model. You can see I've already started on the leg here. I'm building things up very slowly because white is the maximum that I have available to me. It's going to dry and desaturate and calm down, so even with overlapping layers of white, I can build up some variety. So I'm just building slowly. Working with a thin glaze-like consistency, but I have a lot of edges to navigate, just like so. But where I can, I'll try to produce a bit of a gradient. You can see at the lower, this U-shaped semicircle piece on his loincloth. If I have the paint kind of pool up right at the base of that semicircle, gradiates things slightly, Probably dilute my paint down a little bit more. Yeah, just sweeping it in like so, and then picking out these corners. And here and there, here's a good example. I'll take some very small, take my diluted white in a very small amount. Just a very slight blend. Some of these upward facing panels you see with just that thin transparent coating of white, how I'm producing just a little enhancement. And if I make any mistakes, I can add my own kind of superficial scratches or dents. But you can see I have a lot of this white ahead of me to do, so let me get to it and we will jump back. Okay, looking mighty fine. So I've gone through and I've added a lot of detail to the white areas, and I'll be applying much the same touch to all these kind of deep gray / black areas. And it's really simple. I'm just adding white into gray. But I do want to mimic these sharp highlights that I have going on the white armor plates. Try to be a very kind of drastic, how quickly I jump up to a bright area, so these visible kind of substructure, skeletal looking areas still remain dark. That's part of the composition. I want those to still appear dark in comparison to the white and orange armor plates. So just a lot of gradual highlighting, and we talked a lot about that in the last step, but worth noting that it is being done, in fact. So let me carry through with that. Alright, I'm getting somewhere now. Just again, another shot of those final highlights, but taking my brightest silver, going through, just adding a very tiny dot or slash to all the metallic areas where there's a corner or a dip, or maybe a dip that swoops to a corner, depending on the angle of the lighting. And then once I've just about run out of paint, go back up and do just a little bit of blending with this very light silver. And you might notice the color of my brush handle has changed. That's because I'm using a different brush to work with my metallics. Small metallic flecks can chew up your bristles, so I keep a second brush nearby for metallic details. You've probably been staring at this undone base for a while, but what it provides for me with just a simple dry brushing is a bit of a value sketch. So having loaded up some molten orange into my airbrush, I'm just going to lay down a thin glaze-like coat, just unrolling a sheet of tint, and it's been the intention to catch the legs and feet, make everything appear to be dust blown. I'll let that dry, but the cape needs a touch as well. Just a little dust in the wind. Alright, and with that fully dry, I'll go in for another hit of the molten orange. Just laying it on even heavier this time. And now it's starting to brighten. And I like that variety I get from overlapping these transparent passes, you know what I mean? Let things slowly build. Now just stepping along on that base, I have a little bit of skeleton horde. That's one of the airbrush colors. See, I've already dry brushed some in place, and I couldn't quite reach everywhere with my dry brush. Or at least I hadn't dry brushed to satisfaction before gluing the model on. Anyways, here I am just stippling some stony texture on, just progressing towards the front, the area that's more exposed to the light. I guess I'll throw some on top of his foot too, because it just looks bare. Main point being, though, it doesn't have to be pretty. Just wanted to kind of direct the eye, work on a little bit of my light direction. But once that's dry, I'm going to dip back into my well of Speedpaint mixture, that dark wood and Speedpaint medium from before. And yeah, we'll just give it a dousing. All right, let's let that soak in and dry. With that all dried in place, let's add a little bit to this dusty blown look. I'll take some of that Molten orange airbrush paint. See, I have it very heavily diluted. And yeah, the way I see it, in these crevices, more dirt would be collected. So greater concentration would arrive there. That's a fun way to describe that. So yeah, just kind of juicing these crevices. Another layer of this Molten orange. As always, you want to lay things down in a few thin layers, but this time I'll mix some Molten lava with Molten orange, dilute it down in the same way, cover less of the area that I just laid out. I could probably stand add a little more water to that. Yeah, just like so. A little bit of an even brighter variation in the crevices. A little bit up here. Yeah, I guess kind of do it to your own taste and liking, but you can play with this, adding, multiple layers, brighter and deeper colors. Kind of up to you how far you want to expand the ever-twisting kaleidoscope of pain. But for me, I like to go at a nice medium rate, trying to kind of do the tabletop plus version of my previous effort. All right, let's talk about those power weapons and tiny mystical globes. First up, I have some deep gray, and in the past, I painted some power weapons up with a sponge, and just dotting white on top of the black, spraying over it with some hot pink with the airbrush. But this time, I want to go for a similar look. I like that crackling, stippling, energized feel. But the goal is to have the energy kind of moving in a diagonal wave through the weapon. Sort of like some kind of dark crystal containing a, unmade, universe-breaking, pink and lightning energy. So let's get this first coat of deep gray laid down. All right, following that up, I'll go in some white. Have it thinned down ever so slightly, but generally I want a very concentrated amount. I've added some water so the paint will flow from the brush a little more easily. I'll try to keep this a lot tighter, making most of this white energy take place inside of the area that's been covered by the gray. Maybe the occasional dot kind of reaching out of the boundary. Just make sure that is a strong diagonal line running through. And coming back in for a second pass, that diluted white is going to desaturate, but also the intention is to create some overlapping, semi-transparent layers that'll add to this coursing, bubbling look. So just slap all that in place. Okay, time for some fun. I've got some hot pink fluorescent airbrush paint pulled out, and the goal here is to lay down a thin, uniform, continuous sheet of paint. The airbrush paint is naturally diluted to be fed through the nozzle, and when painted on, you can easily achieve a nice uniform glaze. As such, I may have to go back in for a second pass, but it's important that I just have a nice even level of paint sitting on the model. If I don't want it to be seeping into the crevices of the blade, like if I lay it down like this, naturally the blade is going to want to kind of catch it in the crevice there. That's too heavy. Let's go nice and thin. Don't paint that part. But yeah, do paint the blades. And You can see I've also given the same treatment to all of the stormy globes festooned upon his hanging belt. Give those the same treatment as well. Neato. I may want to blackline inside of these crevices. I have just a couple final touches left, though. I'll be taking my nubbed out brush, just lightly dusting some of this orange weathering powder in place. Just kind of gently swirling it around, blending it into place. I don't want to uniformly cover the entire base. Just going to use it in spots, so there's just kind of some varying patches of soil. Maybe I'll just spread a little bit of the weathering powder around. Yeah, much better having dark lined all those designs. So next, just some hot pink combined with white, dropping an edge highlight, framing everything up. Yeah, of course, I'll add to the already existing colors. There's a bit of an experiment. Instead of using the sponge, the idea is to take, put a little bit of a more advanced or newer twist on what I had done previously. So I wanted to see what I could achieve without just a stippling and a airbrushing over of the paint. So I intended I'd have to come in, do a little bit of brush work to enhance, but I think that was also a quick way to get things started, and the textures still carry through nicely. Still gives it that stormy look. You can see I'll just be bringing this up very gradually with my pink and white mixture. And of course, I'll have to go just a little bit brighter in some key areas. Just at all the corners and kind of curving points when a line changes direction. It's going to do a little cleanup work. This will take a while, but we'll jump ahead and have a look at the finished product. And there you have it. Imotekh the Stormlord. In the quantum billion planets of the far-flung galaxies in the 41st millennium, it is, yes, even possible to have a robotic skeleton wizard with pink powers. This is my own twist on the Necrons, and yeah, in hindsight, I'm very pleased. I now have an executable recipe for the rank and file models, and yeah, I know what it takes to finesse some models up. I've taken 2 different swings at this power weapon. I think I prefer the old method, but I could add the edge highlighting and bright line work from the new method to better enhance that. So now I know, and in the future, things will be better. Thank you for watching this video. As always, your your support is greatly appreciated. And if anyone is apporting there, spread the good word. I appreciate that too. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider apporting me on Patreon. We have a lot of fun over there. Hit the like and subscribe button, at least. Alright, till the next time we meet, remain unchained.